Hi, this video is designed to help you navigate the all-important Competencies Assessment Learning Contract Evaluation Form. It's all one form that serves more than one purpose, which I will explain in a moment. You will note that this particular contract for student Tina Fey is an 80-10 learning contract, which means that she is a foundation student completing her first of 2 MSW internships. There are some small but important differences for those of you who are doing concentration internships, which I will explain as we move forward. But let's check this out and take a look at the form. Okay, first of all, it says at the top 80-10 foundation year. 80-10 is the course number for the foundation internship. Competencies Assessment, Learning Contract, and Evaluation. If you are a concentration year student, either advanced standing or second year, you will see that it says 80-20, 80-30, concentration year competencies assessment, and then there will be a drop-down that lets you choose your concentration. It will be very important that you check off the correct item on the drop-down menu depending on what your concentration is, because the form is different depending on what your concentration is, so that it's relevant to you. Okay, so let's walk through the form. And it is a multi-stage process. It is complex. It is really important. It is important to the point that the word that we have for you is that we want this form to be completed and signed by the time you have reached your 100th hour in your field placement, and that we hold the sword over your head of not counting any hours you accrue in field beyond 100 unless this form is in place. Why are we so cruel to you? It is for all of our sakes. This is the form that kind of centers your learning in your field placement and gives us some way to benchmark your progress and your competence in your field placement. Without this, we have no reason, and you have no reason, to believe that you're not showing up just to be a volunteer or to make coffee or drive the van or whatever. This document syncs your experience in your field placement with your MSW program and hopefully gives you some guarantee that all the time and money that you're spending to do this field placement is going to bear some fruit in terms of your preparation to practice as a social worker with a master's degree. Okay? Convincing? Let's move on. I'm going to try and convince you of a lot of other things along the way, including how much fun completing this document is. Okay, before we continue, I want to point out to you 2 important things here. One is this all-important button that says Save Work. Look, I pressed it and it gave me that beautiful green bar that said that everything was saved. This website will not give you a prompt to remind you to save your work. If you do not save your work, it will not save, and you will lose potentially all kinds of really important stuff. You'll see it down here at the bottom too. Information saved to database, that's great. So don't forget that. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is this link right here. Whenever you get confused or are not sure about something, click on here and it will take you to a very extensive and detailed sheet of instructions, including some wonderful examples. But that's not what we want to look at right now, so I'm going to close that and let's go back to the document. Okay, so let me explain the philosophy behind this document. Any social work process goes through an assessment phase, a planning phase, and an evaluation phase. And I don't care if you are a micro, mezzo, or macro practitioner, we pretty much always begin by doing assessment, by doing some planning, and then assessing how our actions have gone. So for instance, in my practice, which was micro-level practice, we're working with folks with serious and persistent mental illness, doing outreach work with them in their homes. We would start by doing an assessment of functioning around a whole bunch of different areas of independent living. One might be social functioning, one might be health self-care, one might be emotional self-care, one might be family functioning, apartment upkeep, etc., etc. You get my point. So within each one of those areas of functioning, there were a number of different items. So let's take an easy one. Apartment upkeep. Knows how to do the laundry. Knows how to cook. Knows how to clean and does so regularly. Things like that. So I would sit down with my client and we would go through all of those different items in all of those different realms of independent living, and we would talk about, how do you think you're doing on this? Are you doing great? Are you doing okay? Is this an area of huge need? And then on the basis of what we discovered the need was, we would go ahead and write some goals. And then we would talk about, in a concrete way, when I come and see you every week, what are we going to do with our time that's going to help us get to these goals? And then at every month or at the end of every quarter, for instance, we would go back and look at those goals and reevaluate, how are we doing? Have we accomplished them? Are we making progress? Should we change the strategies? Should we eliminate this goal and add a new one? That's kind of how practice works. And it's how practice works in most of the places where we function. This form is going to follow that same process, but with some different competency areas. These are competency areas related to social work practice, and they actually have been given to us by our accrediting body, the Council on Social Work Education. Let's take a look at them. There are a bunch of them. The first one, and they have these strange numbering systems. This is 2.1.1, and again, that's CSWE speak. Identify as a professional social worker and conduct oneself accordingly. So that's the competency area. Within each competency area, there are a number of practice behaviors. For this one, there's quite a few. Advocate for client access to the services of social work. Practice personal reflection and self-correction to assure continual professional development. Attend to professional boundaries and roles and boundaries. Effective use of supervision. Demonstrate professional demeanor in behavior, appearance, and communication, etc., etc., etc. And so that's the first one. I'm not going to read through every one of these because you'll be able to do that yourself, but let's just look at the competency areas. 2.1.2, apply social work ethical principles to guide professional practice. 2.1.3, apply critical thinking to inform and communicate professional judgments. 2.1.4, engage diversity and difference in practice. Number 5, advance human rights and social and economic justice. Number 6, engage in research-informed practice and practice-informed research. Number 7, apply knowledge of human behavior in the social environment. Number 8, engage in policy practice to advance social and economic well-being. Number 9, respond to contexts that shape practice. And number 10, which has been divided up into 4 subsections: engage, assess, intervene, and evaluate with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. And it's divided up into 4 areas. Part 1 is engage, Part 2 is assess, Part C is intervention, and Part D is evaluation. And for every one of these, you will see that there are practice behaviors. So, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to do a self-assessment for every single one of these practice behaviors in every single one of these competency areas. And the way you're going to do it is by using these drop-down boxes. And again, this is your baseline. And you have 5 choices, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What do those mean? Is 0 a little and is 4 a lot? Well, kind of, sort of, but it's not a Likert scale. Let's look at the instructions to give us some guidance as to what the heck this means. Okay. What this refers to is something called Bloom's taxonomy, which is a taxonomy of levels of competence. And it is benchmarked to different kinds of recollection and different kinds of knowing. So 0 means, oh. So I'll give you an example. I don't know anything about the NASW Code of Ethics. Never heard of it before. Code of Ethics? NASW? What are you talking about? If that's my baseline, then I give myself a 0. And please feel free to give yourself a 0. This is at the very beginning of the internship. Giving yourself a 0 does not mean that you are declaring yourself to be an idiot. It means that you are declaring yourself to be taking the first step on a journey towards knowledge and wisdom. So be brave and be willing to call yourself a 0. It's a beautiful place to be. 0 means I know nothing. Number 1 is recollection. So the example that I would give is, I can name for you the 6 core values of the profession of social work as defined by NASW. And indeed I can. Ask me sometime. 2 means comprehension. So my example would be, I can explain to you in my own words what the 6 core values of the profession of social work as defined by NASW refer to. Number 3, and really in an internship, number 3 is kind of the gold standard for us. It's the level of knowledge that has to do with being able to use that knowledge, being able to apply it in practice. So continuing with my example, an example for number 3 would be, I can demonstrate my ability to practice in accordance with the 6 core values of the profession of social work as defined by NASW. And then there's a number 4, advanced practice. Now, a caveat about advanced practice is it our expectation that at the end of a 9-month or maybe even 3-month internship, if you're doing summer, that you will reach this level in most or even any of all those areas that we're going to go back and take a look at in a minute? Not necessarily. I hope for myself that before I'm done being a social worker that I have reached this level of advanced practice in a few key areas that I have really delved deep into. It is not necessarily our expectation that you're going to be at all 4s by the time you are done with your internship. That having been said, some of you have been practicing for a long time. There may be some areas in which you are an expert. So just as I told you, don't be afraid to declare yourself a 0. Don't be afraid to declare yourself a 4. But then don't write goals that are around this area, because you're not in field to show off the things that you're already an expert in. You're in field to learn how to do the things that you don't already know how to do. Okay? But let's explain what advanced practice means. It's related to 3 key things: analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So going back to my example, I can look at the practice at my agency and analyze it with respect to how well it comports with the NASW Code of Ethics and its 6 core values. I can critique and create an alternative set of values for social workers based on that critique. Or I can evaluate the efficacy of the Code of Ethics by way of how well it informs good practice. That sort of thing. Okay? So that's the scale that we are talking about. Let's go back and look at the form again. So, for every single one of these, I'm going to rate myself. So, I don't know anything about client advocacy. I don't know what that's taught. I don't know what you mean. I'm going to give myself a 0. Practice personal reflection. I think that I am really good at this. I think that I'm really good at reflecting, and I think that I notice when I am not doing well, and I do a good job of self-correcting. So I'm going to give myself a 3 to start here. I may along the way learn that I overestimated myself. Attending professional roles and boundaries, you know, I'm not sure. I know what I read about boundaries, but all of that seems really complicated to me. So again, I'm going to read these, I'm going to reflect on them, and by myself, I'm going to give myself numbers for all of these. Yes, all of them. Every single one of these. So that involves some time, some reflecting time. And again, we hope that there is some time for that kind of reflection built into the beginning of your internship. Now, note that at the end of the internship, you're going to be re-evaluating yourself on all of these. But look, so is your field instructor. You can't see the drop-down box here because we're not logged in as the field instructor. And of course, when you're logged in as a student, you can only do the things that you're allowed to do. So let's say that it's, 450 hours later, and now I know that I'm capable, well capable, of advocating for client access because I've done it a bunch of times. I'm going to give myself a 3 on that now. Congratulations. You've gone from a 0, from not knowing anything about what client advocacy even meant, to being able to demonstrate your ability to actually do it effectively. But how are we going to know that? We're going to know that because once you have done all of this reflection and self-assessment, you're going to use that self-assessment to inform what you're going to write for goals. And it's this point at which some conversation with your field instructor and task supervisor, if you have one, is called for, because they're going to need to sign off on this, and they should not be writing your goals for you, but they should be consulting with you on how to write your goals. Now let's talk about goal writing for a minute here, okay? What makes a good goal? Let me talk about a couple things that don't make for a good goal. For instance, I'm going to start typing here in this box. Reflecting on my past experience and thinking towards the future in which I always have a little bit of performance anxiety when I'm typing in front of a crowd, so please excuse my typos, in which I hope to provide competent social work services to, you see what's happening here? I'm not writing a goal, I'm writing an essay. Do not write an essay. Write a goal. It should be succinct, it should be understandable, it should be direct. If you want to, write a book, please feel free to write a book. But what makes a good goal? Let's go back and consult once again with the instructions. We've given you some guidelines about how to write good goals. What makes a good goal? A good goal is specific, it is measurable, it is achievable, it is relevant, it is timely. So specific means, I'll give an example. By the end of this internship, I want to know how to do a diagnostic interview and write it up into an acceptable, competent diagnostic assessment. Again, excuse me for using a direct practice example, but this applies universally. It should be measurable. How will I know whether or not the goal has been achieved? Maybe somewhere in there I will write, by the end of this internship, I will have completed 3 diagnostic reports based on interviews, and I will review them with my field instructor, who will tell me whether or not they're adequate. Is it achievable? My goal is to write 750 diagnostic assessments over the course of this internship. Probably not achievable. So, don't think small, but think doable. Is it relevant? My goal is to learn to recite the entirety of the Elder Edda in its original medieval Norse language. Well, it's a great goal. I hope that if that is your goal, you go ahead and achieve that, but it's probably not relevant to your MSW learning contract. Even if you plan on practicing in Norway, learning the Elder Edda in medieval Norse is probably not how you want to spend your time here. And is it timely? When are you going to reach this goal? When does it need to be completed? In many cases, that might be by the end of the internship. But again, this is practice for you in how to write good goals. Writing good goals is really important in social work practice. It might make the difference between a treatment plan or a grant proposal that you make being accepted or being thrown back in your face. So again, it's not just busy work. So there's a couple different approaches to writing goals. As long as they meet these standards, we'll be fine with all of them. Let's go back to the document for a minute. So for instance, I might write a goal that says, by the end of the internship, I will be able to conduct diagnostic interviews and write them up into competent DSM 5 diagnostic reports. Okay. So I think this is a good goal statement. It needs to get more specific because it does not meet all of those requirements of smartness. So I'm going to get specific. I'm thinking big. This is the thing I want to accomplish. When I'm thinking about learning strategies, what are the things that I am going to do to get to this idea of what I want to have be different about me at the end of the internship? So, 1, I will observe 5 diagnostic interviews conducted by other clinicians. I will correct my spelling. That's not part of the goal. Maybe it should be. Number 2, I will read 3 articles about DSM diagnosis. 3, I will attend agency in-service on diagnosis. Now, the reason I put this one in specifically is to give you a reminder. You are allowed to earn up to 36 clinical clock hours for eventual Minnesota clinical licensure through activities that you participate in while in your field placements. However, the requirement for that is they need to be written into your learning contract, and they need to be extremely specific for 3 hours on 11/3/15. Okay? So when it is time, a couple years from now, for me to apply for my LICSW in Minnesota, I can look at all the clinical clock hours that I earned through my coursework, but I can also go to my learning contract and say, oh look, I have 3 hours of clock hours in diagnosis that I can count towards that. And thank you. Okay? So let's keep going. This will get bigger. So number 4, I will conduct at least 5 diagnostic interviews and review them with my supervisor. Okay, so those are 4 learning strategies designed to get me to the point where at the end of the internship I can say that I am able to conduct diagnostic interviews and write them into competent DSM-5 diagnostic reports. If I am your field person and I look at this goal, I will say, that's fine. You will note that there are a couple different approaches towards getting at smartness reflected in the instructions here. Either of them are fine. The one that you see here, for instance, kind of gets at more of that specificity in the goal statement, and then digs even deeper in the learning strategies. This is fine with me. So as long as you remember that within your goal and your learning strategies, I see that it is a smart goal, I will be happy with you, and I will be willing to sign the learning contract, which I get to do. Okay, so I did not save. I didn't press save, and when I went away from the page and came back to it again, all my fine work was gone. What is the lesson of that little incident? The lesson of that little incident is not to ignore this. So, again, blah, 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 and my learning strategies are 1, blah, 2, 3 blug by 11 9 15. I want to make sure that it's timely. And then I need to think about looking back at all of those competency areas, all these ones up here, 2.1.1 all the way to 2.1.10 ED. I want to look at this goal and these learning strategies and say, which of those competencies does this goal have something to do with? Is it about identifying myself as a social worker? Is it about, does it touch on responding to the context that shape practice? Sure. Is it about, does it touch on the issue of engaging diversity and difference and human rights and social justice? Sure. And so I'm going to check those. Now I'm going to add another goal. And I can add goals as long as I want to, but we are telling you that we want you to write a total of somewhere between 5 and 7 goals. We don't want you to write a goal for every one of these competency areas. First of all, that's not really how naturalistic goal writing goes. And second of all, you're just going to have too many goals, and this document's going to be really unpleasant if you have 13 goals. So again, you're going to write a SMART goal statement and learning strategies for this one, and you're going to think about which of these competency areas this one has to do with, and then I'm going to add another one. And I'm going to add at least 5 we think is the minimum number of goals to get at all the competencies and to have a well-rounded internship. But I will tell you that somewhere in these goals, these 5 goals, doesn't have to be in every one, but somewhere in these 5 goals, I'm going to want to see every one of these boxes checked off, because your goals should in some way address every single one of these competency areas, because these are the competency areas that CSWE has given us guidance are the ones that kind of define social work practice. So if I see that, I look at all your goals and I see that 2.1.7, what's 2.1.7 again? 2.1.7 is applying knowledge of human behavior in the social environment. If I see that you haven't checked that one off, I'm not going to sign your learning contract, and as a matter of fact, you won't be able to finish your learning contract. You'll get a prompt that says that there's something missing. All of them need to be addressed somewhere in your 5 to 7 goals, not in every one. So if you've written all your goals and you see that, none of my goals really address the issue of advancing human rights and social and economic justice, and you may be thinking, I'm doing case management with people. What does that have to do with human rights and social and economic justice? Well, then you need to think a little bit harder about what it means to be doing case management with people, and maybe have an interesting conversation with your field instructor about that, because there should be no kind of social work that does not somewhere serve the purpose of advancing human rights and social and economic justice. You may struggle with engaging in research-informed practice and practice-informed research. I hope you don't, but you might. You might be struggling with any of these, but you need to find the place where they fit into your goals. And if you can't find any place where they fit in your goals, seek some consultation from your field faculty person at the U or from your field instructor, or write another goal. So, and then what I want you to do is say, I've written this goal, and this is a goal that I'm starting out. I'm saying that I want to know a lot about it by the end of the internship, but at the beginning of the internship, I don't know anything about this. Look, you have that same scale. So I want to give myself a starting level of competence. That's what LOC stands for. When the goal number 2, I know a little bit about that. Number 2, I can explain it, but I don't know how to do it yet because I've never done it. So I want to use that same scale to give myself baseline levels of competence for each one of these goals that I will have written, all of which are going to meet all of those standards of smartness. So, by the end of 100 hours, I will expect that you have done this initial baseline level of competence assessment for all of these areas, that you have written 5 to 7 SMART goals, somewhere in which all of those previously mentioned competencies are covered, and that you have assessed your baseline level of competence with respect to each one of these. I will also expect that you have gone over these with your field instructor and your task supervisor if you have one. You can see that Tina does not. She just has a field instructor named Adam Sandler, and she has a field liaison who is Will Farrell. So they need to also approve of them, to think that they're also smart, and then everybody will sign off. You can only sign as yourself. When Adam goes in, Adam can sign. When Will goes in, Will can sign. That's what I need by the time that you have achieved 100 hours. So that's most of the work up front. At the middle of the placement, there is a place here, and you can see there is a box for the task. You can't see it, but when your field instructor logs in, there is a box where they can write comments as well. So it's the middle of the field placement. It's the beginning of December, and winter break is coming up, and it's going to be time for me to submit your midterm grade. What we want to give you some time to do is write about how you're doing with this goal. I think that I have caps lock on is what I think. I have made good progress on this goal. I have blogged 3 times with clients and read 2 articles on blah blah. And then your field instructor will also write in and make their comments. And so, you know, I'm getting there. I now feel like I'm at a 2 on this goal. And you're going to do that for every one of your goals. And you can see that your field instructor and task supervisor are also going to rate your level of competence at this point. Now, for instance, this goal, which may be about, you know, glug, this goal is accomplished. I have demonstrated my ability to glug by, and so goal complete. Or you might, down here you might say, this goal became impossible due to program changes. Instead, we propose to do something else. So again, we want comments. This is a place where your field instructor can give a written feedback about your performance so far with respect to each goal, and you can make changes in the goals. So you'll do that for all of these. There are some places in the mid-placement evaluation where your field instructor and task supervisor can give some feedback. You can give some overall feedback. I appreciate the effectiveness of supervision. I wish I had more time with clients. I really love my seminar. Whatever. Even though my seminar instructor cannot type or spell very well. Okay, so that happens at the middle of the field placement. At the end of the field placement, you're going to go through the same process. Everybody's going to make robust, useful written comments, and we'll give you some more background, and we'll give your field instructor great training about what makes a useful comment. You know, Tina's great is not a very useful comment because it doesn't really give you anything to work with. I observed Tina with clients and her ability to engage and build relationships and tune in and show appropriate empathy while also challenging clients to take the next step in their growth. I think that's a piece of feedback that I would love to have. I would also love to get the feedback that the student needs to work on their nonverbal communication because sometimes they smile inappropriately. I'm not sure I would like to get that piece of feedback, but that's a piece of feedback that I would find useful, as opposed to, Tina's a crappy social worker and should find something else to do with their lives. That's not helpful feedback. Okay, so there's going to be feedback by everybody, and again, you have to do it on yourself. Your field instructor has to give you the feedback, and again, what I see when I look at this document should be a reflection of an actual conversation that you have had with your field instructor. What I don't want is for you to sit at home and write your comments, and your field instructor sit at home and write their comments, and for you to never have a conversation about it. So what I see here should be a distillation of a conversation that has taken place. And then everybody's going to do all this piece, and this refers specifically to the goal. So notice here, you have moved from assessment to goal writing to mid-course evaluation to final evaluation. And then a couple other things. At the end of the field placement, I know that might seem a long way away now, but it's going to come up quickly. You are going to reassess yourself on every single one of these, and so is your field instructor. And then there's also a place at the bottom of the form for some final feedback from everybody and some feedback for the school, including from you. I love the SSW. Now at the end, you will see that this is going to be where your field instructor suggests a grade. Either everything is going well so far, it's not satisfactorily up to date, and there's going to be an improvement plan in place, or no credit will be given this grading period. You don't want that grade. This is the grade that you get by not showing up. At the end, your field instructor suggests a grade. Work has been satisfactory, up to date. Work has not been completed. Maybe that means that you're just not done yet, etc., etc. And then finally, your field instructor is going to be asked to check off this box that it hereby attests the student has achieved sufficient competence to engage practice as a beginning MSW social worker upon completion of degree requirements. We need to know that they are comfortable with the idea that you're going to go off and be a social worker. We don't want them to be lying awake at night thinking about, oh my God, what have I unleashed on the community? But this document should benchmark in very concrete ways the fact that you are indeed competent to move on to the next thing, even if the next thing is your next field placement. So don't forget to save it all. Save to database. We love this green bar at the top because it lets me know that all my work has not been in vain. And that, in a nutshell, is how you use the learning contract. You can always refer back to this unbelievably helpful video, and again, you can always click on the instructions that are very detailed and that give you plenty of good examples to use if you don't know what we mean by a SMART goal, if you don't know what we mean by a goal or learning strategy, if you don't know what we mean by Bloom's taxonomy. Thanks for watching.